Welcome, crime enthusiasts. Ever wondered what happens when notorious criminals find themselves behind bars? Today, we're diving deep into the shocking tales of Ku Klux Klan members who face their reckoning in the slammer. From court drama to jailhouse justice and unexpected redemption, these stories are as gripping as a thriller novel. Grab your popcorn, sit tight, and let's unravel the dark and twisted fates of those who carried the Klan's torch of hate. Let's get started. Number 7. Larry Webster. On a hot Texas day, July 19, 2000, a federal jury in Houston delivered a verdict that seemed straight out of a Hollywood courtroom drama. They awarded $55,000 in damages to Larry Webster, a notorious member of the Ku Klux Klan. Webster had been brutally beaten by black prisoners in Galveston County Jail. But why did this happen? Flashback to 1993. Larry Webster, then 42 years old, was arrested in Galveston, Texas, awaiting trial on charges of kidnapping and robbery. But Larry wasn't just any ordinary criminal. He was a proud Klansman, a member of the KKK, an organization with a legacy of terror and hate stretching back over a century. Founded in the aftermath of the Civil War, the KKK quickly morphed from a social club for Confederate veterans into a paramilitary force dedicated to white supremacy, committing heinous acts of violence against African Americans and other minorities. In prison, Larry Webster's affiliation with the Klan was a death sentence waiting to happen. His body bore the marks of his hate, with tattoos that broadcast his allegiance to white supremacy. Recognizing the danger, Webster begged to be placed in administrative segregation for his safety. His request was denied due to overcrowding, and he was placed in a cell with black inmates. The inevitable happened swiftly. As soon as they saw his tattoos, Webster's cellmates knew who he was. They beat him viciously, leaving him with injuries severe enough to require emergency treatment. This wasn't just a fight. It was a reckoning, a brutal payback for a lifetime of hate. Despite his injuries, Larry Webster wasn't done fighting. He took his case to court, representing himself in a civil trial against Galveston County. Webster argued that the jail staff had been negligent, knowingly placing him in harm's way because of his Klan background. Against all odds, he won. The jury awarded him $5,000 in actual damages and an additional $50,000 in punitive damages, finding the jail officials liable for their failure to protect him. Yet justice has many forms. While Webster walked away with a financial victory, he couldn't escape his criminal past. He was still sentenced to 10 years in prison for the kidnapping and robbery charges, proving that even a courtroom win couldn't wash away his dark deeds. Number 6. Thomas Jordan Driver. Fast forward to April 2nd, 2015. The long arm of justice reached out to Thomas Jordan Driver, a state prison guard with a chilling connection to the KKK. Driver, along with fellow guard David Elliott Moran and former colleague Charles Thomas Newcomb, was charged with plotting to murder a former black inmate. This sinister plan was born from a grudge. Driver had been involved in a brawl with the inmate at the Lake Butler prison, during which he claimed the inmate had bitten him, potentially exposing him to AIDS and hepatitis. Consumed by rage, Driver confided in Moran and Newcomb, expressing his desire to see the inmate dead. Enter the FBI with an informant who posed as an ally. This undercover agent convinced the trio that he could help them exact their revenge. They discussed grotesque methods, from injecting insulin to shooting the former inmate. To cement their plot, the FBI provided the informant with a doctored photo of the inmate appearing to be shot dead. The men's reactions were recorded as they smiled and reveled in their perceived victory. But their joy was short-lived. With the evidence in hand, the FBI arrested Driver, Moran, and Newcomb, charging them with conspiracy to commit murder. This scandal rocked the Department of Corrections, which swiftly denounced the guards' actions. In 2017, all three men were convicted. Driver, who pleaded guilty, received a 4-year sentence, while Moran and Newcomb, who maintained their innocence, were each sentenced to 12 years in prison. Number 5. Thomas Terrence. Let's travel back to 1968 to a time of great social upheaval in the United States. Thomas Terrence, a fervent KKK member, was arrested following a violent shootout with police during a botched assassination attempt on a Jewish community leader in Mississippi. Terrence had long been a soldier in the war against civil rights, his hatred inflamed by the societal changes sweeping the nation. Influenced by older extremists, he and his partner Kathy Ainsworth plotted bombings and assassinations, aiming to sow fear and chaos. On a fateful night in May 1968, Terrence and Ainsworth bombed the congregation Beth Israel. A month later, they targeted the home of another Jewish leader. Unbeknownst to them, the FBI was waiting. In the ensuing gunfight, Ainsworth was killed and Terrence was gravely wounded. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. While behind bars, Terrence began a journey few could have anticipated. He devoured hate literature like Mein Kampf, but soon turned to the Bible and classical philosophy. This introspection led him to renounce his racist views and embrace Christianity. With the support of Jewish leaders who believed in his redemption, Terrence was released after 8 years. He went on to earn advanced degrees and became an advocate against the very hatred he once espoused, dedicating his life to fighting racism and promoting understanding. Number 4. Edgar Ray Killen. In 1964, during the height of the Civil Rights Movement, Edgar Ray Killen orchestrated one of the most infamous crimes in American history. A devout Klansman, Killen was deeply involved in the Mississippi Klan's activities. When 3 civil rights workers, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, arrived in Mississippi to register black voters, they became prime targets. Killen, using his influence within the Klan, organized their murder. After being wrongfully arrested and released, the 3 activists were ambushed, kidnapped, and shot dead. Their bodies were hidden in an earthen dam, a grim symbol of the era's brutal resistance to change. Killen evaded justice for decades, largely due to a hung jury in his initial trial. It wasn't until 2005, driven by relentless public pressure and a changing societal landscape, that Killen was retried and convicted of manslaughter. Sentenced to 60 years in prison at the age of 80, Killen's time behind bars was marked by defiance and bitterness. He frequently clashed with guards, especially targeting African American and female officers with his venomous racism. In 2018, Killen died in prison, leaving behind a legacy of hate and violence that still echoes today. Number 3. Frazier Glenn Miller Jr. April 13, 2014, was a day of horror at the Overland Park Jewish Community Center in Kansas. Frazier Glenn Miller Jr., a former Klan leader and avowed white supremacist, opened fire, killing 3 people. His victims, tragically, were all Christians. Miller's path to this act of terror began decades earlier. A high school dropout turned Army veteran, he was radicalized by racist propaganda. After his military discharge for distributing hate literature, Miller founded the Carolina Knights of the KKK and later the White Patriot Party. Both groups preached violent racism and sought to establish an all-white nation. In 1987, Miller declared a war against Jews and minorities, leading to his arrest and a 3-year prison sentence. Upon his release, he continued his racist crusade, publishing newsletters and attempting to enter politics. But his ultimate act of violence came as he neared the end of his life, convinced that he was dying of lung disease. Determined to kill Jews before his death, Miller carried out the Overland Park shooting, only to discover his victims were not who he intended. Miller's trial was a spectacle of hate. He frequently interrupted proceedings with racist rants and salutes. Found guilty of capital murder, he was sentenced to death. In 2021, Miller died in prison at the age of 80, his life a testament to the destructive power of hate. Number 2. Daniel Lewis Lee. In 1999, Daniel Lewis Lee was sentenced to death for his role in a brutal triple murder. Lee, a member of a white supremacist organization, had teamed up with Chevy Kehoe to establish a white ethno-state. Their plan involved robbing and killing Bill Muller, a gun dealer, and his family. Disguised as federal agents, Lee and Kehoe broke into Muller's home. They bound Muller, his wife Nancy, and her daughter Sarah, and after looting the house, suffocated them with plastic bags and threw their weighted bodies into a nearby swamp. Lee's journey to this dark place began in his youth, marked by abuse and a descent into extremism. Known among his neo-Nazi peers as Cyclops after losing an eye in a bar fight, Lee's life was dominated by his violent and racist beliefs. Despite the horrific nature of his crimes, Lee's execution was controversial. His co-conspirator, Kehoe, received a life sentence, leading many, including the victim's family, to argue that Lee's death sentence was unjust. Nonetheless, on July 14, 2020, Lee was executed by lethal injection. In his final moments, he maintained his innocence, proclaiming, "I didn't do it. I made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I'm not a murderer. You're killing an innocent man." Number 1. Dylann Roof. Dylann Roof's name became synonymous with racial hatred on June 17, 2015, when he walked into Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. The church, a historic black congregation, was in the midst of a Bible study session. Roof sat with the group for an hour before opening fire, killing 9 African-American parishioners, including the senior pastor, Clementa Pinckney. Roof's actions were driven by a deeply rooted belief in white supremacy. In the months leading up to the massacre, he had immersed himself in online hate forums and propaganda, nurturing a desire to ignite a race war. He meticulously planned the attack, choosing Emmanuel AME for its significance in Black history and its symbolism of resilience and hope. During his trial, Roof showed no remorse. He represented himself, using his platform to espouse his racist ideology. In a chilling statement, he expressed no regret for the murders, asserting that his only sorrow was that he didn't kill more people. The jury swiftly convicted him, and he was sentenced to death. Roof's cold-blooded act of terrorism and his unrepentant stance serve as a stark reminder of the deadly consequences of unchecked hate. Who knew that the iron bars of justice could turn into a stage for such dramatic stories? From courtroom victories to prison time reckonings, these former Klan members faced fates they never saw coming. If you found these tales as captivating as a page-turner, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories from the underbelly of crime. Hit that notification bell to stay in the loop. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, even the darkest souls can't outrun the light of justice. See you soon.